I did an interview with the Niners radio, Seahawks radio, and then Salt Lake City. And I just said the same thing. And Darren, you can agree or disagree here, but the Cardinals have not had that guy on defense that other players truly feed off ever since Calais Campbell and Tyrann Mathieu. And I think J.J. Watt is that guy. And I think that's one of the reasons they pursued him to such a degree that they got recruiting efforts from Frank Caliendo and Blake Shelton, that they just went all in on this recruiting effort because I think they truly value that aspect. And they realize that's something missing from the defense and the team as a whole.
I agree that he can be a kind of a lightning rod for that. Absolutely. I mean, I think these guys have rallied around Budda Baker pretty well. When Budda was having some of his bigger games, I felt like the rest of the defense was feeding off him a little bit. But I think when you get a guy up front, that changes some things, as well as Hassan Reddick played last year, as well as Dennis Gardeck played last year. I thought they were missing a little something that they had the year before when Chandler was wreaking all that havoc in the backfield. And it reminds me a little bit, and again, we'll see what level J.J. Watt plays at, but it reminds me a little bit of anybody on offense. You know, I don't think the offense in his more solid days was always feeding off Larry Fitzgerald, but when he made big plays, it was easy to kind of get that vibe. And that's kind of where I see this going. I don't know if they'll necessarily feed off him every play, but he is definitely a guy that the energy will be there. And again, I get where Kyle's coming, quite frankly, with the Lions game. I 100% agree. You can't turn the ball over, and that was the biggest problem in that game. But ultimately, I am a believer in emotion with part of this. I don't think it always just boils down to some of that stuff. And I do think these things aren't necessarily it's one or the other. I do believe that playing poorly can lead you to making some of these dumb plays like throwing interceptions or running poorly. I do believe in my heart that you might not be efficient running the football, but one of the reasons you might not be running efficiently with a football is because as a blocker, your energy, your want to is not there because you're not doing well or you're in a bad mood or whatever it might be. I do believe that that's unquantifiable, that can impact some of these numbers that Kyle talks to. So I'm trying to be a bridge for the two of you so that we can all coexist together.
That's good. Good. The Red Sea rising tide here. Okay, I get that. Well, Darren, this will be a quick answer from you because it was the only quick answer that J.J. Watt gave when he met the media, and it was in response to when he was asked, "How much do you have left in the tank?" Go ahead and paraphrase and/or quote exactly if you remember it, because he was a man of few words. The only answer was only a few words.
Was it not a lot? A lot. Oh, something like that.
It was a lot, and then he paused. A whole lot.
A whole lot. That's right. And the big thing was he stared right in the camera to do it.
Yes.
And I know my first reaction was, all due respect to Mark McClune, I'm kind of happy I wasn't the one who asked the question, because it was like the record scratch a little bit. Like, we're all going through this great introductory press conference, and he's really verbose on a lot of stuff, and he's a great quote, and he's well thought out, and he's smiling, and he's happy. And then Mark's like, hey, yeah, there's a lot of talk about how much gas you have left in the tank. So how much gas you have left in the tank? A lot. A whole lot. And it's like, whoa, okay.
Yeah. Well, I will say this, having done the out-of-market interviews, there's a lot of skepticism as to how much he has left. I'll say that. The prevailing sentiment, listening to some of these out-of-market guys, now consider it's in the division, and they might be a little salty in Seattle and San Francisco, but they really wonder about the 5 sacks last year. They wonder about the amount paid by the Arizona Cardinals, i.e. overpaid. And I responded with this, Kyle, and you tell me what else you would have responded. I said, look, if you want to believe some of the analytics, Pro Football Focus since 2018 has the 3 highest grade edge rushers as Khalil Mack, T.J. Watt, and J.J. Watt. He was one of 2 defensive linemen last year to play more than 1,000 snaps. He led the league in tackles for loss against the run. and he had the highest percentage of double teams of any defensive lineman in the league. You put him now with a Chandler Jones where they can't get away with that to nearly the same degree. And if you go back to the year he had Jadeveon Clowney, he had 16 sacks. And in some of the other years when he came off injury, he had 20 sacks in each of those. So that was some of the evidence I cited. We don't know, obviously, but to get back to his answer, a whole lot, those numbers would seem to bolster his case.
Yeah, I wanted to look at his PFF grades because I think that tells you a lot more than just a sack total. When you got 5 sacks, it's like Dennis Gardeck had more sacks than J.J. Watt last season, but that certainly doesn't tell you the whole story. And I agree that it seems like he still has a lot left because he's playing at a high level when you look at pressures and run defense and all that. And then I just think he's the type of player where if he gets hurt and misses a few games, to me, that's the bigger concern is the injury history, not at the level he's playing at, because maybe he's not peak J.J. Watt of age 25, 26 when he's consistently the NFL Defensive Player of the Year, but that's such a ridiculously high ceiling that even if he's a tier or two below that, he's still a Pro Bowl player. If things come together correctly, I think he could be an all-pro player still because he's 32. He's not 36. So I feel like if he stays healthy, he's certainly still going to be a game wrecker. And obviously the Cardinals think that too, or else they're not giving him that type of money.
I found it incredibly interesting because this did not come up when he talked with us. And obviously he's been a few places, but he did a short podcast interview. He didn't do a whole podcast. It was like a 10-minute segment, but he talked to Adam Schefter on Adam Schefter's podcast. And this point, I have not seen him having made it anywhere else, but I thought it was really interesting. You know, he's from Wisconsin. He grew up in Wisconsin. And when he was younger, obviously, he was paying attention to the Packers and was a big Packers fan when they signed Reggie White as a free agent. Now, Reggie White, one of the best defensive linemen of all time, bounced around a little bit, started in the USFL, went to the Eagles, started dominating. I did not know this, but he did because, JJ turns 32 later this month. When Reggie White signed with the Packers, he was 32 years old. And he obviously had a number of excellent, over-the-top, great seasons with Green Bay, including winning a Super Bowl. Now, J.J. Watt wasn't saying that's exactly what he's going to do, but it is interesting to note that if he can stay healthy, there is that possibility. And there are defensive linemen that last a good chunk of time. And again, this is a 2-year deal for the Cardinals. They paid a lot of money, but if he's a game wrecker for 2 years, $30 million is going to be a bargain, quite frankly, if he plays at the level that he thinks he can play at.